So, everyone, needing some hand sanitizer, are you? This video will probably be watched well into the future, but right now when I'm making this is when everyone's kind of losing their shit about this coronavirus. You know, it's a little scary. I'm not going to go into all that stuff again. I have a different video where I talk about that. But everyone's buying up the hand sanitizer, and hand sanitizer is a good thing to have right now. It really is. There's none in the stores. It's price gouging online. People charge fucking like $100 for like a normal size thing. Whatever. You don't need to fall for that price gouging because you're definitely smart enough to make your own hand sanitizing gel at home. And I'm going to teach you to do that today. This is definitely going to be one of the most complex videos I've made of how to create something, but it's still really easy, and I'm going to try to do my best to constrain myself so I don't dump out too much information about this, because it is a bit more science, but also break it down into easy, understandable steps. So right off the bat, I'm going to tell you about what you need to make it, and then I'm going to show you how to make it, and then I'm going to give you like variation options on like what types of liquids or other things that you can use to fill in gaps to make your hand sanitizer more or less potent, you know, depending on what you have on hand. And I probably going to stumble through this, folks. So, okay, the first thing that you need to make a gel is agar powder. Agar powder. This one just says agar powder. Sometimes it's agar, whatever. It's basically a type of seaweed that's been bleached in water, and then they like evaporate that water off, and then they collect the powder, and it's tasteless, smellless. It's like a vegan substitute to make jello, gelatin, things like that. The reason I like agar is because it sets up rather room temperature or warm, meaning you don't like you can make jello out of gelatin, which is sourced from animals, but you know how you have to stick jello in the fridge or it won't set up, and you leave it out long, it waters out on you. You can't do that. You don't have that problem with agar. So this is going to be what we thicken our liquid with. And I'm just going to keep saying liquid because I'm going to get to the end and talk to you about the different types of liquid you can use to make this gel. So just to put that out there. The next thing, and this one's optional, is glycerin. This is basically just a vegetable-based, it's an oil but an alcohol. I'm not going to jump into it really deep, but it's a moisturizer. This, with the things that we're going to be adding, will help prevent keeping your hands from drying out. But honestly, if you can't get any, even though it's usually like $1.50 for a bottle like this at almost any pharmacy section, of any store you go to, if you can't find any, it's not necessarily an essential. It does help the gel glide a little easier. It gives you what they call slip. The third thing you'll need is I like Liquid Germall Plus for my preservative. There's a word. I don't want to hear some shit about how you can use essential oils or grapefruit seed extract or any of this stuff as a preservative. You can't. It's not. And even if you could use essential oils as a preservative, well, let me back up there. You can, but you'd have to put so much into what you're making that you give yourself chemical burns when you use it. You need a real preservative. The last thing that you want to do while trying to protect yourself or your loved ones, friends, family, local community from not having hand sanitizer is to give them a hand sanitizer that's going to end up fucking eating their skin off because it has cultured mold or yeast or bacteria or fungus, because this happens when you are making a water-based creation, which I've never shared here at all how to really do it, because it's a bit more complicated and people are like, oh, whatever, I'm just using it for myself, so it doesn't matter. I'm sorry, you're worth not having your skin getting eaten off. Okay, so you need some sort of preservative to stop bacteria and viruses. You need some sort of preservative to stop contamination from growing in your water-based products, and that's what a gel is. So I like Liquid Germall Plus. You use it at a really small amount. It's like 0.05% is the max amount you can use. You can go down to 0.01%. You can use other preservatives once you look into them, but just use a real preservative. I'm not saying that preservatives are like 100% safe for your body and your health. But when you look at the risk analysis compared to giving yourself a flesh-eating disease, I think you can handle it, especially if you're like out there drinking soda and eating fast food. Or, you know, anything like that. Think about it. If you smoke cigarettes, I don't want to hear shit about you being like, I don't use preservatives in my body care. Because it's just, okay, in brand. So your main things that you need to recap are agar powder, glycerin's optional, and you definitely need a preservative, and I like Liquid Germall Plus. And you can buy it in super small amounts on Amazon, from Lotion Crafter, from all types of places. You just, again, you need a minuscule amount for the batch we're making. And then you're going to need a little cook pot, a spatula. Optional is a thermostat temperature thing. Fuck, I don't remember the name for it. You're going to stick it in there, and it's going to tell you numbers of how warm and hot, of how hot your water is getting. I'm on the ball here, aren't I? So if you don't have that, I'll show you a trick later so you know what temperature you're roughly at without having to go buy one of those things. So that's basically what you need to get started, but at the end process, you're gonna need, let me grab this, a blender of some sort. You could use a food processor too. Anything that's gonna get in there and go around with blades and chop stuff up. A mixer, a stand mixer isn't gonna work. It's just gonna throw little pieces of gel all over, and you won't have any sort of gel consistency going on there. Okay, so I'm going to now show you how I'm doing this. So, and let me backtrack to say that I'm gonna put like a recipe, like a how-to information and all that kind of stuff, and everything I talked about in the description below. That way you're not like, I still know I'm dumping a lot, even though I feel like I am trying to hold myself back pretty good here. Okay, so 4 cups of liquid. I'll specify the liquid that I use and prefer in options in just a little bit. Okay, so 4 cups of liquid. You'll notice that my liquid is not clear. I'll tell you why in a little bit. Okay, let me see, is that 4 cups? Yes, it is. Okay, right into your pot. It's room temperature liquid, could be warm, could be cold, that doesn't matter. Now, I'm going to do 1 tablespoon of my agar powder. I hate this tablespoon measure. Couldn't find the other one because, you know, those things run away on me. So there's a tablespoon of agar powder. And then I'm going to give it a good mix with my spatula here. Is that what these are called? Spatulas? I'm like, is that, or is a spatula thing that you like flip an egg with? I don't know. Okay, so I'm all set up for a gel now. And, alright. Let me think how I'm going to do this. Again, most complex video I've ever made. Usually I'm like, look at this, pour this over that. You're smart enough to do it. So now I'm going to head over to the stove, and I'm going to have the other half turn the camera off, and then I'll start once I get over there. Okay, so I've got my pot on the stove now. I turned it up to about medium, maybe just a smidge under medium. You don't want it too hot, too fast. I've got a digital thermometer in here, and I've got mine set for 190 degrees Fahrenheit. You can go up to 200. In the beginning, you don't have to stir it all too much, but as you get closer to temp, I want you to damn near be stirring it consistently to prevent it from sticking to the bottom. You'll never prevent it completely, but you don't want like a thick half-inch coat of gel on the bottom, because you need that in your liquid to make a gel. If you don't have a thermometer, it's no big deal. Once we get a little further along, I'll show you how to kind of tell that it's done without a thermometer. Okay, so I'm almost to temp here. And you can see how it's starting to foam up. So if you don't have a thermometer to stick in your pot, it's pretty good to tell that, like, when you're close to boiling and you start really getting that foam on the top, that you're probably within 10 degrees of your range. So, you know, give it 3 to 4 more minutes and call it good. So as soon as I hit 190 here, and I'm just like 3 points away from that, all you're going to do now, there it is, 190. So I'm going to turn off my pot. turn off my pot. I'm gonna turn off the stove. You're gonna have a bowl here, and you're just gonna pour it right into your bowl. If you get little bits of agar on the bottom of your pot like that, that's totally normal. That's how much you're gonna have left if you're, you know, stirring it constantly. Oh, hush yourself already. I know. Okay. Okay, so now, remember how I said agar, it's cool because it sets up regardless if you stick it in the fridge or not. So you can choose to put this in the fridge if you want, but putting really hot stuff in your fridge is pretty rough on it. But you can also just sit it on the counter, and in about 2 to 3 hours, it'll be completely gelled up and stable at room temp. So I made a gel this morning because I didn't want to like get started on this video and then wait for hours. So this, you know, is a different bowl, different batch, but it's the same thing. And you'll see how it's set up in here, right? So now I'm just going to do this, just cut it up into little manageable squares. I mean, you could do whatever shape you want. So check this out. Now that I've done that, it turns into like all these little jelly squares. All right, so that's what happens after it cools. Okay, so we've made our little jelly squares. Now the next thing you need to do is take your blender and figure out how much your, what the fuck is this called? The blender vessel? That's what we're going to go with. You're going to figure out how much this weighs for you. You can use a little kitchen scale. That's what I did. If you don't have a kitchen scale, generally you can hop online and Google like average weight of, and then like your blender's brand. I have done that with mixer bowls because I'm like, oh fuck, I forgot to write down how much it weighed before I started. And generally there's information from the company or on like baking forms. People need to know how much these things weigh. So now, you know, and you're going to write that on there so you don't forget to write down something. I use dry erase markers, but even if you use a Sharpie, rubbing alcohol will take that right off. So now you're just going to put your gel, or your little jelly clumps or jello clumps. You're going to put this stuff in that. Alright. If you find that you have excess liquid, after you cut it up, you can dump it just onto a strainer and let it drip for like 20-30 minutes. That way you get rid of that excess liquid. So, now I'm just going to put it on there, right? I'm pretty sure you guys know what's coming next. But before we do that, I'm going to add in 3 teaspoons of my glycerin that I should have had opened before I started the video. Oh, I have a knife here so I can stab it. Oh, I'm going to talk about working sterile at the end of this, I swear to God. So, now that I'm not working sterile, don't worry, I'm not selling this to anybody. I'm just doing this to show you guys how it works. So I'm going to put 3 teaspoons. Fuck, did I say tablespoons earlier? I meant teaspoons if I said it wrong. So I'm going to put 3 of these in there. And again, this option you can skip if you can't get your hands on it. But it really does help prevent your hands from drying out and makes the gel glide a little easier. So, there's my glycerin. Now, I'm going to add about 1/4 cup of alcohol. You'll notice that my alcohol is a different color. I'm going to talk about that. You know, the alcohol options that you have. I'm going to add about 1/4 cup. You might want to try like doing like two tablespoons at a time, and by the way, 4 tablespoons makes up 1/4 cup. Just to make sure that you don't overwater your gel. So now, there it is, the lid. And no, the alcohol isn't acting as a preservative. I know people are like, oh, I can just, I'm like, no, you'd have to have 25% alcohol content and you are not getting that much in a gel. Okay, so now I'm just gonna, you know, I'm gonna blend it. much have an unpreserved gel right now. This is gel. I'll show it to you in just a second. I swear, I'm like, look inside of this from your 2D thing. So now I'm gonna stick it back on the scale. And I like to make sure my scale is set to grams, and I'm gonna take it off of there, and I know what my weight is, and I'm gonna minus that weight, which is 1,370. Oh fuck, that's kilograms. Son of a bitch. Make sure it's on grams. Just say that, and then. Oh no, I don't want kilograms. I don't like this scale. And I hope it heard me say that too. Come on. What is making it go crazy? I keep pushing it and it's like, oh, come on. This is what makes good videos. It won't. Let me see if I tear it. Please go to grams for me. Not fluid. Ah, got it. We did it. Okay, I'm gonna sit it on there, and now it says, and it switched back to kilograms, motherfucker. God damn it. I need it to be on grams because okay, well, it's 3 pounds and 0.6 of an ounce. I got my husband here doing math for me because I'm not going to pretend like I'm fucking Rain Man. I Google it. So what you can do if your grams work out is you put that on there. It says it weighs, like, let's say it weighs 1,000 grams, and your thing that you're mixing in weighs 500. You minus 500 from that so you know how much your gel weighs. And then you go onto Google and you type in 0.5% of, and then how many grams that it weighs together after you tore it off of there, and it'll tell you how much Liquid Germall Plus you need to add in there. And when you order from a reputable company for Liquid Germall Plus or any preservative that you choose to use, it should have on the website the percentage usage. And so here, I misspoke earlier when I said 0.05% and 0.5, big difference, still minuscule amount. So it says right here between 0.1 and 0.5. So you can do that same math. On like 0.1%, of blah blah. I swear to God, I'm putting all of this stuff in the description. And I'll even tell you the exact amount I did for this, so you just have the base recipe. It is 3.73 grams. He did a bunch of math over there because the fucker wouldn't change to grams for me. I swear to God, it's not that hard. Really, it isn't. Okay, so now I'm gonna measure. Oh shit! What am I gonna do if it won't go to grams and I'm measuring out the? Come on, baby. Tear. Oh, okay. It's on grams. I like to use one of these to get my preservative out because it's heavier than it looks. And so I know I need 3.73 grams. Too much. Just enough. That is like less than half of a tablespoon. I mean, there's barely any. So now I'm gonna get that into there. Generally, I have better tools to scrape stuff out, and I actually like to use those little things they give you to like take cough syrup in or whatever. I like those little plastic containers. And then you're like, oh, that sucks that it's plastic, but you'll find that if you start making like really sterile stuff, you kind of, I use them again for other things, but I like being able to take it out of a package and know that it's not contaminated with anything. Okay, so now I've got my preservative in it. I'm going to blend it again. Blend it really good. Just like that, I have a hand gel. Now, when you first blend it, it'll seem really liquidy. I'm not gonna lie, I probably could have let that that gel set up a little bit longer, but don't worry, it'll continue to set up. I'm gonna have my other half grab the camera, if he hears me. Other half, grab the camera, so I can show you what it looks like on the inside. So this is our gel. Again, it's going to thicken up a little bit, you know, probably in 3 or 4 hours. Definitely, it'll thicken up faster than that if you pop it in the fridge. And then you can just stick this right into the fridge, or, I mean, bottles, shit. And see, I just did my whole hands with that tiny bit of gel. And then the agar-agar isn't really sticky. If you put too much glycerin in it, if you're like, you know what, I'm going to double the glycerin, you're going to deal with some stickiness. And I literally just made hand sanitizer for, I don't know, probably $1.75, $2 worth of materials when you divide the cost per how many batches you can make with it. So that's a hand sanitizer, folks. Now I'm going to have them sit it back down. We're going to talk a little bit of details. If you can get the camera to sit back up the way we need it to. Yay, there you are. So I kept saying liquid, right? I kept saying, oh, you know, add to my liquid, or the type of alcohol I'm using. So let's talk some options here. What you saw me put in there for the liquid was an herbal infused witch hazel. Witch hazel, it does make a little bit of a waterier gel because it tends to break down the agar, but not so much that I feel that it outweighs the benefits of the antiviral and antibacterial properties of witch hazel. But you can also just use some distilled water if you have it, if you can get it at your store. It's like 50 cents a jug. If you don't have distilled water, you can use tap water. It should be last resort for any type of water-based creations that you want to stay stable, because there's all types of stuff in your water that can kind of feed bacteria. But I know that right now, at the time of this video, most stores are sold out of like everything, including water. So if you've got it coming out of your tap, if you've got a water filter at home, that's better. The thing I talked about earlier was witch hazel. Now, regardless of which one you choose to use, you can use these just as is for the liquid. You don't have to do any further steps. These are perfectly fine on their own. But the reason my gel has color is because, oh, I didn't bring it over. Whatever. I made an herbal infusion where I just took a big quart jar like this, or even a quart jar. If you want to use more than a quart jar, actually, because you won't end up with the 4 cups you need. And so I maybe put in an ounce of yarrow flower, an ounce of lavender buds, and then I poured boiling witch hazel over top of that. And because they're really volatile plants, meaning they have really high oil levels, you don't have to let it sit for 2 or 3 hours. It's not like a nourishing herbal infusion. Do not drink this. And then I strained it out, and then I used that liquid to make my gel. Basically, I'm filling in the gaps here, folks. So you can just use witch hazel, or you can just use distilled water. Witch hazel is going to have way more antibacterial and antiviral properties compared to water that has none. I mean, you know, if you wash your hands long enough, sure, but it's not going to do that with one little swipe. So this is the least potent aspect. This is another step up to make your hand sanitizer a little stronger. And then if either one of these, even if you're using water or witch hazel, if you get that up to boiling temp and pour it over whichever antiviral or antibacterial herbs that you choose, and generally you're going to know if they have those properties if they smell really strong, like yarrow and lavender, or chamomile would be another example of something that smells really strong, or mints, things like that. And then you're going to let it infuse, and you're going to strain that and use that liquid, whichever liquid it is, to make the base of your gel. So that's liquid options. Now, when it comes to alcohol, oh yeah, I forgot. If you don't have those herbs on hand, you're like, I don't have any herbs right now. I don't even know where to get those. It's overwhelming. Do you know where to buy some oranges? Or do you have any oranges or dried orange peel? Because you could also, and this is, I just happen to have this laying around because we've been eating oranges lately. So this is a jar with orange peels, and every time I eat an orange, I put the peel in there and I put a little bit more witch hazel, and a little bit more, and a little bit more until it fills up. And now you could totally use, and you could use limes, lemons, any type of citrus, grapefruit, doesn't matter, to infuse your witch hazel. You can't do this with water. It has to be witch hazel. And what that's going to do is get all the pretty potent antiviral aspects from citrus, citronella. Citronella, is that the right term? I don't know. Probably wrong there. But they have these particular oils in them that really like to attack the membrane, the cell membrane of this virus. Any virus really, and so this is just, I just made this as an all-purpose cleaner, honestly, but you could totally use this to make a gel if you don't have access to herbs. And if you're like, I only have water, I can't go out and like buy anything extra beyond maybe the agar powder that you'll find at any health food type aisle. It's in pretty much every store you'll go to, you'll find agar powder. You can say, well, I'm just going to have to add alcohol to this. Now, you can't get smart and try to boil alcohol and pour it over it to make it super duper strong, because alcohol boils off. So you'll kill your alcohol content. When I use the witch hazel and I bring it up to a boil, I've pretty much taken off all alcohol that was in the witch hazel. Most witch hazel has like 4% alcohol in it, so it wasn't much anyways. So the alcohol that I added, I like using tincture. Again, I'm really big on filling in the gaps with things that I make. So you could just do plain water, plain alcohol, and and it's an okay hand sanitizer. But I can say, you know what? I want yarrow tincture. I want lavender tincture. I want, I know I'm stuck on those two. You could even make an orange peel tincture. Anything that's got those antiviral, antibacterial properties as your alcohol added is great. Now, my tinctures are made out of 100 proof vodka. That means it's got 50% alcohol, 50% water. Generally, the CDC is saying that you need a 60% alcohol content to kill off viruses. And I agree with them if that's all you're using is alcohol. So, like yarrow kills all gram-positive bacteria on contact. Lavender and disrupts the cell membrane just like the oranges do. So, there's places you can fill in there that would compensate for that 10% less alcohol. I don't work with grain alcohol, so if you have a grain alcohol tincture, it might be worth making a test batch before you or just plain water and just a tablespoon of agar-agar, and seeing if that grain alcohol degrades your gel, because it can eat through pitch like it's fucking a hot knife through butter. It can probably rip through some gel stability pretty quickly. On that note, you can probably get away with 70% isopropyl alcohol. I would do 2 tablespoons at a time, just like I talked with the tincture, and make sure that I'm, even a tablespoon at a time maybe, to see how it's acting to the stabilization. This means 70% means 70%. This is stronger than what the CDC is recommending. I know that right now, the odds are good you can't find this on your shelves. If you're watching this in the future, you're like, it's everywhere. It's like 50 cents a fucking bottle. What are you talking about? But currently, when I'm making this video, it's gone. Everyone's buying it because the hand sanitizer is gone. I would not encourage you to use this, just as a side note, on your hands plainly. Unless you're ready to crack and bleed and fuck your skin up. So if you're like, that's gone, I don't have any tincture, what do? You could go to the liquor store and buy yourself some liquor. I'm not saying that's not going to be tapped out here pretty soon, because, pandemic and people getting drunk probably go hand in hand. But you can go buy yourself some 100 proof vodka. You can buy some grain alcohol, and you can water it down some, because it's like 190 proof, and that will eat your skin off. And just Google distillation calculator, and you'll find tons of resources to where you can say, I have 1 cup of 190 proof alcohol, and I would like to know how much water to add to make, it 50% proof or 60%. It'll tell you how many, in cups or liters or whatever you tell it to put in there. So it takes away all of that hard math. So those are the liquid options that I talked about. So I know that right now people are capitalizing on people's fear, and that is a big issue. I was concerned that putting out this video, people would price gouge. They'd be like, "Oh, making a gel and selling it," and or maybe you're watching this in the future and you just want to learn how to make a gel for yourself or for your shop. So the one thing you didn't see me do here was a lot of sterilization. And that was just for the sake of making this video. But the thing is, whenever you make something that's water-based, you need to be like so sterile that it's like kind of gross to be around. And generally, actually 100% of the time when I make these things to sell, I'm in my commercial grade, pretty much solid stainless steel kitchen. I've got gloves on, I've got hairnets on, I've got a bottle full of isopropyl alcohol that I'm spraying everything down, and I have an 80-second sanitizing dishwasher. I know that you don't have access to those things, but you can still make sure that you're taking steps to be sanitary, especially if you're going to decide to sell this to the public. Meaning there's my kitchen is pretty clean right here, but I do cook food in here, and I do have dirty teenagers, and I do have animals, and just generally stuff like that that's not going to be in my commercial kitchen. And so it's really important that you're wiping down all of your surfaces, your surfaces, there you go. Fuck it, clean your surfaces too. That you're sterilizing everything. If you have a dishwasher that has a sterilized setting, that's fantastic. You could look into like a 2% bleach solution. Google it online. It's the things you dip things into and it kills it off. You just need to be as clean as possible when you're making anything that's water-based. But right now, I know people are panicking. So I would say that if you're going to be making this in your home kitchen, whatever preservative that you choose, do not choose to use the lower amount option. Use the max amount. That way your stuff isn't going bad. And on that note, because it's right up there with contamination and being sterile, by the time that you see mold growing in your product, it's already been there a long time. You see mold and things like that, they're like, consider it like a mushroom, where these mushrooms and the mycelium is living underground, and then when conditions are perfect, they pop up, right? And so mold is the same way. It's already colonized your entire thingy, and by the time you see mold, it's already taken over the whole thing. So if you're like, oh, my mold's, my bread's a little moldy, I can just take that one piece off. It's through the entire loaf of bread. You're just not seeing it because it's just not fruiting all over. And so that's why I really recommend using the higher end of the preservative percentage of whatever type you use when you're making this in a home kitchen, because you won't see the contamination. It's microscopic, and sometimes you can't even smell it. And you just want to be safe. Don't try to save yourself from the coronavirus and give yourself fucking MRSA. Right? So again, there are other options. If you're like, this is pretty scary, you could just put some tincture in a bottle and spray your hands. That's an option too. But I just thought, there's no hand gel anywhere, and so everybody is just freaking out. And I know how to make gel. I can make gel in metric tons, and I am going to be doing that in my commercial grade shop for people here pretty soon. And I'm not going to price gouge people because I'm not a dick. But you're smart enough to do this. And again, I'm going to have all this broke down in the, I lost the word for it. I'm losing words all day. I am tired. In the description, that's such an easy word too. So you have this step by step and everything that I talked about and options and like that. Because I know that I talk a bit. And this is me holding back. This was a restrained video. I could tell you a lot more details. So, anyhow, you're smart enough to do this. You can make this stuff for yourself, for your family, for your community, and you don't need to be panicked about not being able to access these commercially made resources because, again, you're smart enough to make this on your own. So, if you're watching me on YouTube, if you're watching me on Instagram, wherever you're at, if you're watching me on Facebook, wherever, make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, turn on notifications. All these things help me get seen, help the information get out there, help people feel more empowered. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Had to look at him to make sure he turns it off. Bye!